full support and tacit support, some of us also tactical support to these or systemic support to these non-state actors. Moving now back to the southeast. We've seen people say, "Oh, these guys are freedom fighters. They go ahead killing people." Just yesterday, there was an attack in Imo State, attack on security operatives, killing and actually burning them. And a very gory thing to see in the northwest. Back in the northwest now, we have banditry and kidnapping and what is generally known as terrorism going on also in that region. People being killed on a daily basis in the north central. We've seen that, but what we refer to as the middle belt. My guest this morning is one person who takes time to look at issues and thinks about them critically and analyzes the issues. And sometimes a policy analyst, public affairs commentator. It's good to have you again. Always a pleasure talking with you. The last time we had a conversation, you were raising an alarm as to Nigeria's our unpreparedness for the census, and somehow seemed like that alarm was raised early enough to see that the census was suspended. Now again, you've come out with the Middle Belt region and what your thoughts are. Do you think, it seems like you're worried about the security breaches and the level of insecurity coming out from the north, rather from the Middle Belt area, to be one that, according to you, one that would, maybe overwhelm the country. How did you arrive at this conclusion, and walk us through, your thoughts on what's brewing in the Middle Belt, as you've put it?
Okay, my earliest interaction with the Middle Belt was, I think, in 2015 or 2016, when I don't know how many of us will recall that there were incident killings in Agatu, where there were Agatu massacres shortly after President Buhari's inauguration, or well into 9 or 10 months well into his administration. And so from then, I've continued to study, but not with any particular interest. The news reports of killings, invasions, often reported as herdsmen issue, farmer header crisis, and you see a lot of terms for that. And it continued to become worrisome because every day you see the news almost repeating itself. Agatu had been also visited with violence repeatedly. And not just that, but there are other communities like that in the Middle Belt. And as it concerned Nigerian, it began to worry me. Why is this happening? What is really happening? Why has it defied government intervention, if any? And that at the level of curiosity and at the level of shaking my head every time I hear news like that. But eventually last year there was a turning point, and the news became unbearable for me. And I said, look, someone has to look into this and really understand what is going on. Done private and district inquiries into what's going on. Many times I have spare resources. I travel, I go to the Middle Belt, I visit communities that have been attacked, and this is without, of course, media fanfare. You wouldn't even see it on any page of mine. I sometimes interact with people who have lost loved ones, people who had been macheted, people who narrowly escaped and are recuperating. I visited a lot of IDP camps in Nasarawa, in Benue State. There are also planned trips to other parts of the Middle. That region stood the greatest risk of being harmed by the upcoming census because, as you would know, what is being reported as insecurity in the region is not at all insurgency, and begin to question things. I don't like the narrative of once one media house reports and others run around and copying and often reporting that issue without taking the time to investigate it. Let me paint a picture of what I've seen in the Middle Belt, that we don't know who they are. and they come to a particular community and they attack for 3 or 4 times, many times with forewarnings that they're going to attack. And once the attack becomes consistent, that particular village moves uptown. People in that village or community who have relatives elsewhere move to find shelter and safety in those their safety. Those who don't have move uptown. Those who don't have move into what you call IDP camps. And many of these IDP camps did not start as a result of government intervention. These are places where people usually gather to shelter themselves. And then oftentimes you see now the government or maybe NGOs coming in to provide some form of succor to them. So when people move into IDP camps, you would expect that the villages will remain empty. But that's not what happens. Now, other people from other tribes, usually from the tribe of the attackers, come in and set up their farm tents and their ruga in those villages. And it is permanent occupation. And so when the villagers try to go back, you see that they are attacked and killed. But so if the attackers have a knowledge to move out a community, are moving other people in the community, and so if you go to places like Plateau, you will see that there's documents of about 102 communities that have been permanently occupied by people who hitherto were not occupiers of those communities in the last 20-25 years. You see same in Nasarawa State, you see same in Benue State, you see same in Kaduna, especially the southern side of Kaduna. Why do we then keep calling this thing farmer header crisis? And so I think that we should start by naming it what it is. It's no longer farmer header crisis. I think what is happening is that it's a brutal civilization war. For instance, let's go back to the nation-state Nigeria. I am coming from a town of Nnewi in Anambra State. And my town is known as an industrial cluster. But if you go through the history of the town, you will know that the town was not as big as it is today. What happened was that you had the era of generals, of warfarers, people who had a lot of, warriors and all of those things that happened before the nation state came in. So if you had more warriors and more soldiers, what you could do is that you could mobilize and attack members of other communities. And as much as you're able to drive them out, you take their land. And so if you wanted land, farmland or things, you now try to attack a community, move the people there, and then take their land forcefully and occupy it and name it your territory. So it began to happen, not just in Nnewi, but in many parts of Nigeria, before there was a nation state. And once there is a nation state and there is a land use act, all properties now belong to the state government. If you wanted to acquire land, there is a protocol to acquiring land. Young people are taking over their properties. But what is happening in the Middle Belt today is there are people sponsored by I don't know who. And sometimes it feels as if they have the active connivance of people in constituted authority who go around killing people, displacing them in communities, and permanently taking over their lands. So instead of calling it what it is a conquest. It is a conquest going on, and people are reporting it as farmer header crisis. It's not as if there's a whistle blown or your farmers are headers come and fight. No, it's that people who are original landowners are killed repeatedly until they feel unsafe in their land, move up, and then other people move into that place. And then if you had allowed the census to happen, what would have happened is that the census enumerators will go into those villages and enumerate the houses and the people they see in those villages and count and officially gazette them as the people we saw in these villages, which means that the people who were original landowners are now permanently confined to IDP camps without any hope of going back, whereas their communities have been captured, sometimes renamed by invaders. So this is what is going on, and I'm beginning to sense that as of today, what you have is that people are being attacked and people are looking up to the nation states to protect them. And as of today, the nation state has failed woefully in offering original landowners that protection they need. The Nigerian state is unable to stamp its authority to say, look, we are now in a modern civilization. These things happened before Nigeria came into existence, but now that we are in modern civilization, these are the rules. Unfortunately, Nigeria is unable to enforce it. And that's why I'm beginning to sound early warning that the time will come when people will now lose their confidence in the nation state and will resort to self-help, as you've seen in Southeast, as you've seen in South-South, as you've seen in Northeast. And then when usually that happens, they begin to attack all elements of state structure. They attack the police, they attack the military. They don't want to see you because what they will usually say is when we were being killed, where were the military, and now what is happening. So usually that's the where it starts, but it doesn't stop there. Let me pause for a while for now, my
This
dear
could
brother.
be this could be described as some level of fear mongering and all. And some people would say, look, yeah, we're trying to stoke what isn't actually happening, because these areas, the area referred to as the Middle Belt, is the North Central area, and these states, most of these states, have witnessed growing levels of insecurity. You're not the first person to raise the alarm as to some of these attacks being orchestrated to grab lands and all. The Southern Kaduna people have raised this alarm over time. They've been screaming and saying, some of them are saying, look, there seems to be a deliberate plot to or some level of ethnic cleansing around the region. But the security operatives would say that's not the case. This is a case of attacks and what do you call it, reprisals, where people are attacked and then they go back, come, what do you call it, regroup and come back to attack, those communities. How do we draw a line between actual insecurity that is fueled by, what do you call it now, conflicts between communities and ethnic groups, because this is not peculiar to the North Central. Just of recent, we've seen this similar ethnic conflicts in the South region, in Cross River, for instance, in Ebonyi as well. We've seen that. So how do we draw the line between natural ethnic conflicts and then this sort of ethnic cleansing that yourself and some people, other people, have raised alarms over?
Well, the thing is this, that what I like doing is what I call, or what researchers call, root cause analysis. Now and then you keep hearing news of killings, farmer header crisis, this community attack, this number of people killed, this number of people displaced. What you want to do is, what is the root cause? What's the root cause of this problem? And you begin to ask questions, and you begin to investigate. And then if you ask questions long enough, answers will begin to come. And once you place those answers on any analytical tool and begin to crystallize your findings, then it begins to point you towards a particular direction. And then, like I wrote yesterday, or was it 2 or 3 days ago, I said there are many manifestations of insecurity in the North Central region. Today, I'm limiting my answers to North Central, which is where I've spent at least the last 7 to 8 or 9 months investigating what is going on, both collecting secondary materials and actually doing on-site visits myself. Making sure that the figures or things I get online is consistent with the things I'm hearing on ground. And where I find those inconsistencies, I try to reconcile the differences, right? So yes, you have, by the way, the process of a civilization is usually a gradual and a slow process. There is no way there will become one bang. Before Nigeria came to be, you had ethnic fiefdoms, towns, clans. They had their own administrative style and structure. And then you had your usual ethnic, even within one big ethnic group, you still have your intercommunal clashes within the ethnic setting. And then when you have multiple ethnic groups cohabiting in one place, you usually have that strife for land, for resources. You still have boundary disputes scattered all over Nigeria, and then you have the boundary commission unable to manage the many. So if you go into boundary disputes and intercommunal clashes, there are evidences to point that there are things happening. And so they're prehistoric. Some of these things dated back to years ago, where this particular community is laying claim to this particular land, and then this particular community is laying claim. And so in that era of claims and counterclaims, you still have what you call episodic violence. So anytime a generation comes up, they will try to fight to reclaim a land their great-grandfathers told them belongs to them. So you still have scattered all over the country. And I don't want Nigerians to muddle things up. That is distinct from what I'm describing. And so while that is still happening in some parts of the Middle Belt, what I'm reporting on this morning is distinct from what I've just described to you. So you have, even in the Middle Belt, there are episodic tribal conflict between this tribe, the other tribe, and those rivalries are bound to be there until we grow to accept Nigeria as a state. So you find that it is as we journey into statehood that those identities begin to find or coalesce into the greater national identity. As I say, those competitions and those tribes are still open and it's still active and it forms some part of the insecurity and conflict that we see. Move away from that and come back to the issue so that we don't mix things up. I ask that today, I might not necessarily call it a genocide. I don't know if it qualifies to be called ethnic cleansing because it's not as if there is a particular ethnic group that is being targeted. But what you see is that when people target a land or a community, they move in there, attack there, and usually the attackers don't stay. Right? It seems that there's a militant wing that attacks, move into other places to attack, but usually when they go, other people come to settle, and there is peace, quote unquote. But when the original community owners say, okay, maybe there is now peace, let's go back, the attacks will resume. So then that shows you that there is somehow a connection between the attackers and the settlers. That it seems that the settlers, have vital connection to the attackers to warn them to, oh, the owners of the community are coming back to take their community. Let me give you an instance, for instance. Go to a Moon Council ward in Kwande, local government area of Benue State, as we speak, and find the people who are living there. Just Moon Council ward. We can give you names of places. If you can go and investigate and find people who are living there. Are they original owners of the land? These people living there today, 2-3 years ago, were they living there? And how did they acquire this land now? Did they buy it? What is the deed of assignment? And the people who used to own the land, if they sold the land, what did they do with the money? Or how come the people who were owners of the land are now languishing in IDP camps? Some of them are even in IDP camps as far away as Cameroon. In fact, there are active IDP camps in Cameroon where Nigerians in their hundreds of thousands from the Middle Belt are there. So you still have people forced out of the operations of the program. But you also see people who are forced out from the activities of people I'm just describing to you, living almost near permanently in IDP camps without hope of returning to their communities because some of their communities are being renamed and captured and occupied. So this is not fear-mongering whatsoever. And what I've tried to describe to you, I'm also trying to limit my language and to moderate my intonation so that it doesn't spark off anything. My goal here is not to spark off ethnic rivalries or any of those things. That's usually not my goal. My goal is to bring the attention of the Nigerian public to say, look, this is what is happening. How then can we collectively design a solution to that the rights of indigenous landowners are protected, and then that will factor also in the interest of these people, whatever their interests are. If their interest is that they don't have land, how can we find intelligent modern day answers to some of the questions occupying their minds? Because I also think, what could be the agitation of these attackers? What could be their motivation? And so you have to think both ways. So how can we find intelligent responses to some of the deepest questions that they ask? Those are some of the ideas that I have, not necessarily blackmailing any particular ethnic group and glamorizing the other.
Now let's talk about the issues of solid mineral mining in some parts of in some of these states that you mentioned. People have termed this whole attacks to be attacks deliberately fashioned to chase what you call it, residents and inhabitants of these communities where natural resources are found, so that they can mine them with ease and no one questioning what they do. Does this have play a role in the violent attacks that we've seen in recent times?
Yes, it does have a role to play because if you study insecurity in the whole of the country, or even in the Middle Belt now, if you say, let me start out studying insecurity in the Middle Belt, it will take you years and then you won't find one answer to the several manifestations of insecurity. So you will find, okay, for this particular insecurity, this is the cause. For this particular manifestation, this is the cause. For this particular manifestation, this is the cause. If you go on investigating solid mineral mining in Nigeria, what you see will boggle you. It's mind-boggling what is happening there. And it's usually with active support of people who are usually in places of authority. But that's the outcome of the inquiry that I'm presently on. But let me comment on that in passing. You see, Nigeria's Land Use Act and Nigeria's laws have made it so much so that once solid mineral is found in your land, that land ceases to become yours. That land again, I'm not sure. I have to refer to our constitution. But I think what it says is that all these minerals are sequestered and are in the care and the domain of the federal government.
Absolutely.
Right? So that if I have a house and then, for instance, solid mineral or crude oil or natural gas is found in my land, that land automatically becomes national asset instead of mine. So it moves from my ownership to government ownership. So what you also find going on in these villages is that once there seems to be discovery of any natural mineral, gold, bauxite, ores, all of those, or name them. Once they are found, it seems like even if the nation state, which is the Nigerian military and Nigerian police and the Nigerian security apparatus, is unable to condone off the land to begin extractive processes, that there seems to be speculators or mineral miners, gold diggers, you might call them, or whatever name you, then they begin to acquire the services of armed personnel to scare away members of the community, take over their lands, and begin mineral exploration activities. So that is distinct, and it's ongoing in several communities, even yes in the middle belt, and then not just in the middle belt, some other parts of the country. So that is distinct. I have not had the resources enough to investigate that. So yes, I agree that it is happening, but it's quite distinct from what I'm describing to you this morning. So if you go to middle belt, you will see several manifestations of insecurity and several causes of insecurity. And then when you want to ask, why is this farmer crisis happening? And even in the farmer header crisis, you will still see deliberate, not deliberate, but sometimes things stemming from mismanagement and mistrust. For instance, you will see a community attack headers and then headers retaliate. So that's happening also. So there are several places that you find that, but that's usually not what's happening always. So you find that, and then you also find something that looks like, people coming in, take over land and settle there forcefully.
Very well said. The conversation continues. Just stay with us. We'll be talking some more right here on your radio experience. You can count on. We'll also be bringing you in to share your thoughts with us, and we'll talk some more solutions because my guest is not one who just talks about the problem. We talk about solutions as well and advise federal government on what to do with all of these issues that we're seeing. How can we, reduce the levels of insecurity that we've been experiencing across the country and the kind of supports that we've seen coming from even citizens in the country. We'll be policy analyst as well as public affairs commentator joining us this morning. Keep it with us.
Eagles 102.3 Abuja.
Yanga Lotto don't come. Come chop better prices every day with only 100 naira. I know they want you. Every day, people get chance to win. Bone straight hair, iPhones, Samsung phone unko, iPad, laptops, TV, and many orishi them for 100 naira. In Kechi, where you day. Yet Sunday, where that's your 100 naira change. Oga Yanga don't come. Yanga Lotto don't land. With just 100 naira, if it be you, play Yanga Lotto today. Yanga Lotto, do Yanga.
Oga Yanga, madam, make we do the Yanga. Like say we jump in Maka, brother, waiting with the matter. Won't you make it Yanga? Yanga Lotto, which come chop the Yanga.
Please listen to this announcement. A reputable media house is looking for experienced media marketers with excellent command of English and a minimum experience of 3 years. Interested applicants should call 080 5919 8658. That is 080 5919 8658. Thank you. Please listen to this announcement. A prestigious spa and salon needs the following: a therapist, a nail technician, and a hair stylist. Interested applicants should send their CV via WhatsApp to 081 579 17278. That is 081 579 17278. Thank you.
Eagles 102.3 Abuja.
Thank you for staying with us on Eagles Outlook. This is your radio experience. You can count on Eagles 102.3. And this morning, it seems like it's becoming something else. The middle belt, the subject of our conversation this morning. My guest is one who's done extensive work, researching the area. And, he's speaking, letting us in on what, his concerns are regarding the North Central region, where there seems to be some levels of conflicts and violent attacks on communities, chasing away community dwellers and then somewhat replacing them with others. The conversation continues. We'd love to bring you in the conversation. Feel free to call 090-7353-0044. That is 090-7353-0044. And 090-8766-8888. That is 090-8766-8888. You can send SMS and WhatsApp messages to 090-9705-4450. Now, Chima, let's quickly look at some ways to address this. These killings and attacks that may even snowball into something else, like you've predicted. What can be done? What can the federal, state governments, and even individuals, Nigerian citizens, do to avert whatever volcanic eruption you may have predicted in these regions as we've seen them?
It is to restore the confidence of the people in the ability of the states to protect them. Right? Nigeria has state institutions, the military intelligence, the police, all of the whole gamut of Nigeria's apparatus, right? And so that apparatus must work for the people and must be seen to be working for the people. As at today, usually when people have problems of this magnitude, not just in the Middle Belt, anywhere around the world, the first person they call onto is the establishment political platforms. And so that was why I wrote before the elections that the Middle Belt will first respond in the ballots and then eventually in the bullet, which is the only language the oppressive states listen to. So when people have problems of this magnitude, they begin to call on their senators, on their lawmakers, on their governors, on the political establishment, on the, all of those things. And the idea is for the government to run to their rescue. And when consistently, especially over an extended period of time, the government fails to run to the rescue of the people, people begin to see government as part of the problem. And once people get to the point of losing total confidence, that there's a total collapse of confidence in government, the next thing that happens is self-help. And as of today, if you've traveled around the country, you would know, because there was a time I said that, look, for insecurity, the people can mint terrorists faster than the government can kill. We are 220 million people population, according to hungry and angry. And then if you're unemployed, hungry and angry, and then you have growls against the Nigerian state, one becomes somebody who's going to mobilize you, who's going to give you guns and give you a purpose. That's really easy to happen. And I did say in one of the articles I wrote, but I've not had the liver to publish it. I said that I've been to the mango tree, under the mango tree, where Nigeria turns its citizens into terrorists. Because I visit people, and there was this particular mango tree that was striking to me. You had about 10 or 11 able-bodied men. They are just playing what? Playing games. And if you see the way they were playing what, you will know that the word they were playing is a constellation of and hot. If you talk to them, some of them lost their wives and all their kids in attacks. They have no access to their farmland, nothing doing. People have kept them in IDP camps for 7 years, promising them rehabilitation. Nothing has happened, and they've been there for more than 7 years, waiting for the government to intervene. And so in that atmosphere of injustice, this person feels so powerless. And all you need is for someone to give them a political motivation and tools to take up to arms. And usually, so you have a fodder of people. In fact, they are terrorists in the waiting, only waiting to be activated. And you have a lot of them in Nigeria, not just in the Middle Belt. And so what I'm saying is that people, I don't think, what I'm telling you now, I don't think the people of the Middle Belt will wait more than one electoral cycle. One electoral cycle, and you will see what I'm telling you. That as of today, what you keep hearing from the Middle Belt is farmer header prices, right? keep listening. Very soon, if the parents intervene, what you keep hearing now is that those ethnic groups will band themselves together and break the hands of the Nigerian state and will attempt to break the hands of their oppressors. So you see now, in the East, you still have things like unknown gunmen or ESN, who originally started off thinking, oh, we are going to fight the oppressive Nigerian state, we're going to fight for the people. But usually, even if they set out to fight the Nigerian state or fight for their people, it doesn't last for more than 3 months. It derails. It has happened in the Northeast. It has happened in the South-South. It has happened in the Southeast. In fact, it has happened in Colombia. Anywhere you study conflicts of this nature, when people start out to fight against the states, usually the first 6 months, 3 months after that, they derail. And then the issue with Middle Belt, why it's going to be worse than all the other places you've seen, is that already in the Middle Belt, there are manifestations by God's design, many ethnic groups, different ethnic groups. And these different ethnic groups have competing interests and have prehistoric animosities to grind. So if you go to Benue today, you will still see many competing ethnic groups. Now, what will happen when you begin to have ethnic militias? They start fighting the Nigerian state. Very soon, they will now start fighting old tribal wars with new tools. So it becomes so convoluted that they are not just fighting against the state, that they are also fighting against each other, and then no outcome, no policeman could come to mediate. Because again, yesterday or 2 days ago, you saw what happened in Imo State. And we're now beginning to paint pictures that things like that could spring up and get worse if we allow it to start in the Middle Belt. So yes, Nigerian state should start by saying there is a land use act. If you want land, acquire it according to the law. Nigerian state must go back to those communities, find out those communities, unearth those people, and bring back the original owners of landowners. So justice before any other thing. And then the Nigerian state should find the merit, the backbone to stamp its authority. Who are these people attacking these people? Do they move by air? Why is this all convoluted? Even if they have support within the government, can the government find out those people that offer them that support and take them out? And so if you don't solve the problem and show Middle Belters that you can solve the problem, Middle Belters will attempt to solve the problem by themselves. And usually we've seen that once people start to attempt to solve problems of that nature by themselves, it usually gets bad very quickly.
Good place to bring in the callers now. Let's get your thoughts in 09073530044 and 09087668888. Apologies those of you who called in earlier. I couldn't take because my guest was trying to make a very solid point, very interesting point. 09073530044 09087668888. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, my dear brother. This is Alami. I greet our guest. In fact, he has said it, or I don't like myself. You see, I have always said this, that we, the middle belt of Nigeria, is the rope holding onto the pant around the Nigerian waist very tightly. And then when that rope is removed, the nakedness of Nigeria will be exposed, and nobody wants to see that. The middle belt of Nigeria is nations inside nations. I stand to be corrected and fast-checked that there is no other region that houses so much different ethnic groups like in the Middle Belt. And then when you now have, that over the years, we have been marginalized politically, infrastructure-wise, and in all ramifications, and you have elements of land grabbers in form of marauding, earthmen, and also the marauding earthmen coming into, I want to use Plateau as an example. I'm from Kogi State. Now, when you go to some communities in Plateau, you see that there is this attempt to try to name some certain communities in Plateau under the Fulani settlement. There is no inhabitant Fulani inhabitants in Plateau State. I stand to be corrected. So when the Hausa, whether do they have any Hausa indigenous to Plateau? But when you now have communities that is being named, you're trying to name a community in the Hausa and Fulani name, it will not stand. That is one of the reasons, that is what is going on in Plateau and so many other north central zones. We are facing, threats from marauding headers coming in to try to grab our land, and the government has not really managed it, enough. we will not sit and fold our hands and watch, foreigners coming to claim our land. Our ancestors will not forgive us. Until the government is sincere,
All right.
until the government, both at the local, state, and federal level, the politicians are sincere, to respect, to know that our ancestral home is our ancestral home, and for no reason we will not defeat for anyone.
Thank you very much, Alamin.
To have this back and forth and insecurity.
Thank you, Alamin. Let's bring in another caller before we get back with my guest. All right, so lost that one. Call 09073530044 and 09087668888. Perhaps we need to begin to have more honest conversations around these issues. Nigeria houses one of the largest is diversities in the world. The diversity and identity, existence of Nigerians is one thing that people want to protect at all costs. And if we do not begin to have very, very honest conversations around this to protect the identities and communities of the people come
Hello.
from, thank you very much for joining us.
I want to appreciate our guests. Our guests have spoken well. In fact, I want to concur with the last caller. I mean, though sometimes me and him we disagree, but this time around I'm in agreement with him. You see what is happening, most especially like that in Plateau and other places, and some in Middle Belt. You see some people coming in order to take over their land. These people have been, something happened in Peliri local government. So they wanted to change the name of that particular village to unknown name. The people came up and disagree. They say this is our ancestral land, this is our tribal land, this is the name given to these people, to this community. Why will you come from somewhere and try to take over that place and name it after you? And which the people resisted, and it's done. So until something is done, most especially in the aspect of this insecurity, you can't just come. I can't just go now to go and claim somewhere in Oyo and claim that it's name it after my name, that I'm the originator of this place. It can't work. So until all these things are checkmated, and our leaders and our Nyangwas, our Ulamas, and our all these things, they must put their hands together in order to curb this insecurity, because it's so alarming. I'm telling you, in the Middle Belt, they have succeeded in doing that in the part of Kaduna, in other parts of Kaduna. They have taken over all those places, maybe after the way they want, and now even ban them from coming to that place. You have to pay to the bandits in order to have it until all these things is done.
All
and
right.
you just made I remember that video that you just played. So may God help you also. Thank you.
I mean, thank you very much. Let's come back to you, Mr. Christian. So this conversation has also brought up some other issues. For instance, a situation where a governor of a state decides to change or convert a chiefdom into an emirate, or an emirate into a chiefdom. This is a community that has existed for hundreds of years, as with its own ethnic structure and leadership structure and all. And then the governor comes in and says, "Oh, we're going to change this. We want to change this," and that's packed up a lot of violence. What do you say to that?
Well, that's the point. Because your station is regulated by NBC code, and because I've been it myself, because I've tried to go and broadcast at your platform, and that's also why there are things, even when I want to say them on your platform, I have to bite my tongue.
Absolutely respect
right?
you for
But
that.
usually, things regarding this nature cannot be sustained except they have active support of people in government. You see, in some places, they have successfully taken over the lands for years. Now they are in the process of renaming the land. And renaming the land or communities sometimes has to be officially gazetted. And so these people have gone through the violent stage. They are now in the process of consolidating a land that they've acquired by conquest. But in some places, there are active conquests going on. So, and then when you talk about people in government, yes, there are people in government who seemingly have the same ideology or philosophy or attitude to life as the same people who attack these communities. And so that's why you saw, without mentioning names, but Nigerians know who we are talking about, that without mentioning names, you see there are people who were in government, and some of them are in government presently, who are providing active something. You can't find it you can't say this is the concrete evidence, but when they act and speak, you also see that they act and speak in a manner that suggests to you that, look, it may at appear as if the people in the bush and the people in government houses are one and they are the same people. Let me just leave it at that.
Well said. Let's bring in one final caller. Oh well, I think that this would be a good place to wrap up the conversation. But what would be your final thoughts as we wrap up, Mr. Christian? I really need us to land, take something back, especially those in government, those in authorities who may be listening. What message would you be sending to those people this morning? What would you want to say to them?
Usually, because of the kind of access God has given us, I don't like advising government in the open. Once I start talking in the open, I'm talking to the everyday Nigerian, right? What can I tell Nigerians? First, Nigerians should know what is happening. Because once you move away from the middle belt, all other parts of Nigeria, people are oblivious of what is happening. People just see it as farmer header crisis. And first, so let us start realizing that this is not a farmer header crisis, that this is a warfare of civilizational proportions. So let's first acknowledge it as such and let the media begin to educate people. Once Nigerians know what is happening, maybe it will agitate our hearts as they are. Let the media begin. So once the media begins to report, Nigerians will follow the media to understand what is happening. And once we come into the full realization of what is happening, then Nigerians may begin to demand for credible. Because as of today, what you have are pockets of voices in those activities crying out that if Nigerians, all of us know what is happening, maybe people from the middle belt, people from the southwest, people from the southeast, people from the south, and indeed people from all parts of Nigeria and beyond will begin now to demand answers from the government. Maybe if all of us start pressuring the government, they may be pressured into acting before the people start taking the law into their own hands. And once that starts happening, you will see evidences of it, like some of the things you keep reporting from the southeast will begin to happen in the middle belt. Just that now, because of the many presence of many ethnic groups there, they will be multifaceted and the conflict will be hydra-headed. And that's not what we want to see. And what we're saying is that we have less than 6 years to intervene in the middle belt before the region goes up in flames completely.
Let's hope that never happens. A big thank you to Chima Christian, public policy analyst, public affairs commentator, and even at some point a journalist himself. Thank you so much for talking with us this morning. And we hope that Nigeria and Nigerians will begin to heed some of these warnings and begin to take proactive measures to avert all of this. And like you mentioned, the media reporting things as they are. We also went ahead to say, look, there's some regulations that stops the media from doing the things that they want to do sometimes. And we hope that we all begin to understand the value of honest conversations, and then we begin to take honest steps to address our problems. Again, thank you so much, Chima Christian, for talking with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And this is where we'll leave the conversation this morning. Let's move on. At about at the top of the hour, Martha will take over on the Midday Extra Show. And at about 9:55, in a few minutes from now, we get on with the business news. I'll bring you the business news before I finally take a bow. Thank you for being a part of the conversation this morning. Those of you who joined in from 6 a.m. or even before then, thank you so much for tuning in with us. We do not make light of your participation in